Hello everyone, my name is Roisin and I work in the Plant Evolutionary Ecology Lab of Dr. Emily Austen. And our lab studies the plant Halenia deflexa. So Halenia is shown in this diagram here and also in this photograph here. The species has small, inconspicuous flowers, and each of which are adorned with nectar spurs. So a nectar spur is this long appendage here. And gray literature reports that early Halenia flowers are larger and have longer spurs than later flowers. So we thought, how would a changing flower shape affect the pollination of the species? This became the central question of my research. How do within plant floral changes affect the pollination of Halenia deflexa? So I set out to collect flowers and to quantify this change. I marked a set group of Halenia deflexa individuals, and I came back to those individuals to collect new flowers over a period of about a month. I measured the flower spur lengths, so that's this measure right here, and I also measured the flower height. So flower height is just the tip of the petals to the base of the flower. Altogether, I saw some really obvious changes in the flowers. This pair here were collected both from the same plant, but there's about a month in between the two. So notice how small the later flower is, and also how there's almost no spurs left. There's just barely a bump left. In my analyses, I found that flower height and spur length decreased significantly throughout the season. And I also found that variability within the individual plants was much larger than the variability among individual plants. So I found that both flower height and spur length decreased gradually, but I also found that their rates of change were not the same. After about the 14th day of the experiment, the spur length started to decrease much more dramatically than it had before, and I didn't see the same result with flower height. The same summer, I watched Halenia deflexa for visitation from insects. And to watch visitation, I basically just stood in front of a patch with a voice recorder and spoke about what I saw for 30 minutes at a time. So going into this, myself and my team, we really weren't sure if we were going to see any insects visiting these plants with very inconspicuous flowers. And to our surprise, I saw a lot of insects visiting Halenia. The main visitors were definitely bumblebees, and they made up 83% of all the visits that I observed. And some other visitors were syrphid flies and wasps and other insects. Visitation by bumblebees, however, it didn't last the entire flowering season. After about the 14th day of observation, I never saw another bumblebee visit. In my analyses, I found the probability of a patch being visited by a bumblebee had a negative relationship with the day of the experiment. So throughout the experiment, with each passing day, the probability of a patch being visited by a bumblebee was decreasing. So overall, in my research, I found that individuals of Halenia deflexa do in fact make flowers that are gradually smaller than previous flowers and that are so variable from one another that the within plant variation greatly surpasses population-wide variation. I also found that spur length began to decline more rapidly after day 14. And if you recall, day 14 was also the last day that I observed bumblebees visiting Halenia. And so when you put these two results together, it seems that we have decreasing spur length that is coinciding with the decrease in Bombus visitation. I'd like to be clear that my research does not prove whether bumblebee behavior was influenced by spur length, and future experiments are needed in order to test causality of the association between the two. My research does, however, provide some novel information about Halenia deflexa, and it suggests how within plant variation could affect a plant and pollinator system. I want to acknowledge and pay respect to the unceded and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq peoples that my fieldwork took place on, and I'd also like to thank my boss, Emily Austen, as well as all of these other people for their help. Thank you.